Yeah, good morning. So, last session we learned about events. We saw about how to handle the events and all our JavaScript events. You can see yesterday we designed this touch. Yeah? Touch start means it will execute this function and it is going to display some message. And the how it works, I can touch on my screen on that image, then it will display that. We it will not respond to mouse click or enter button like that. We have to just use the touch options. Next, important after understanding this, so after knowing about these events, now today we will see one more very important, custom events. Custom events means how we can create our own events. This is very important in interviews. At any level, in interviews, Angular interviews, these questions are very common. A lot of questions are asked which are related to custom events. Actually, custom event means you can configure an event for any component. Generally, all these days you used existing events, but you can create your own events. We can create our own events. So you can configure an event for any component. So how to configure? For that, you need to understand the architecture behind event. Already yesterday I told you event uses observer pattern, all are common things. Here key point is Angular events are derived from event emitter base class. They are derived from event emitter base. That means all events in Angular are derived from this event emitter base. That means if you want to create an event, that event must be of what type? Event must be of type event emitter. It must be of type event emitter. So what is the type of event? So in Angular, events are of type event emitter. All events are derived from the base class called event emitter. In different technologies, we have different. Actually, all use JavaScript events only. That means React uses JavaScript events, Angular uses JavaScript events, but not exactly the same way. Already we saw that JavaScript uses on click on change. Here we define click change. Actually, every technology have its own event library which transforms JavaScript events into their dynamic events. But finally, events are JavaScript. In React.js, it uses JavaScript events, but we call them as synthetic events. All are derived from a base class called synthetic event. In Angular, events are derived from a base called event emitter. So event emitter is the base class for all events. So if you want to create a custom event, it must be of type event emitter. It must be of type event emitter. That means syntactically, I will just give you the point. So event, here this is custom event. Custom event, it should be of type event emitter. Event emitter. And we should allocate, event emitter is a generic type. That means what kind of generally event have to emit some value. So it is generic type. That means it can send any type of value. Already you learned that, suppose on click, we are writing on click. Here we are writing click. How click event emits its properties. Click have some properties. How it will emit those properties? It will emit the properties by using $event. So what is the $event type? What is the $event type? It contains some properties and methods. That means it is of type object actually. It is of type object. Similarly, when you design an event, you can decide what it can emit. Is it string? Is it number? Is it object? Is it array? An event emitter can emit any kind of value. So if you have some properties for event emitter, those properties are defined as a type. You can emit object, you can emit string, anything. Those emitted values are stored in the memory. That means by using new. New is memory allocation operator. Event emitter, what we do is we will allocate the memory for it. That means this event related properties are loaded into memory so that we can access and use those properties. So technically we have to create events, and whatever events you want to create by yourself, custom events, they must be of type event emitter. Event emitter. But here so many other technical points are there. You cannot simply create an custom event and use it. For that, lot of basics are there. In order to create our own events and how, in order to handle the events, actually what happens is, see, generally suppose we have a component. We have a component, and this component is suppose product component. In the product component we have some data. In the product component we are having some data. So that means it is having some products list. It is having some data. Now I want to filter the data. Then what we do is we can create a filter component. We can create a filter component. Actually, this filter component will have a interface. It will have an interface so that you can filter the data. It is having some interface. Now what we do is we have to use this filter component. We have to use that filter component in this product component. When we are using this filter component in product component, here there must be exchange of data. That means this component, product component, have to send data. Product component have to send data to filter. That means in filter, what fields will be displayed? Suppose product is having name, it is having price, it is having stock. Now filter should use them, am I right? Filter should use those fields. Suppose I am using some another component. Another component is, suppose this is a employee component. This is employee list, right? This is employee component. In employee component, we have employee first name, employee designation, employee salary, like this. Now, when this filter component is used for employees list, now the employees related information must be sent into it. That means it should contain as first name, it should contain designation, it should contain salary. That means when you are designing a component and you want to use that component in another component, first challenge is how we transport data. Because we need to transport data from one component to another. Another point here. So from filter component, actually what we do, filter, we have to write on change. That means when user is changing filter, then what should happen? That should affect on change, that should affect on product list. That means again we need to transport data from filter to product list. Not only data, we need to tell when to filter. That means we need a custom event. We need an event. That event will tell when to change the filter, when to display the result. That means we need to transport data from one component to another. Here see, in which component you are using filter. We are using the filter in product component. We are using the filter in employee component. That means now product component is, this product component is parent. In the parent component, you are using a filter, which is child. Now here the question is, how we can use a child in parent? How to transport data from parent to child and from child to parent. If we can handle that, then only we can create custom events. So to create custom events and manage custom events, you need to learn so many new things. What are the basic things you have to learn? So in order to configure and create custom events for components. So you must know few things like how to access a component, in another component. How to access a component in another component. Second, how to transport data from parent to child. Third, how to transport data from child to parent. These are the challenges, right? So in order to configure custom events, first you should know these three things. Without these, you cannot handle custom events. So you should know how to access a component in another component. You should know how to transport data from parent to child and child to parent. Let's see. Once we know these three things, then it is easy to handle. In interviews also, questions are asked in this way. That means in interviews, directly they may not ask custom events. Majority of the interviews, remember this is very important for experience level interviews. In every experience interview, you will get a question on this part, compulsory. So, and it may be about custom event or about the architecture behind custom event. If they think that you are having a lot of experience, they may ask the architecture behind custom event. right? So that's the reason we need to know how these custom events work. Let's see these three things first. How to access a component in another component. We already done it. If you remembered, I showed you Netflix design. In that design, in the parent, we have main. In the main, we have register, and we called a register in another component. That is already done. We can access a component in another component. Let's see. So that means first I will show you this part design. Means we will try to achieve this first. What we will do is we will design a parent component, and in that parent component we will access a child component. We will access a child component, and we will learn how to transport data from parent to child. How data is transported here. We will learn how to transport data from child to parent. These things we will see. Those are the 3 points very important. So let's see. First, I will add the components for you. See, let's go to the components, and I'm generating ng generate component parent. I'm adding a parent component, and I'm adding ng generate component child component. Skip this. Okay. I'm adding directly to components parent and child. Okay. Next, I will keep parent in the startup. So parent component is in the startup. In index, I will start with parent component. So parent. Okay. So parent component is working. Let's first design this parent component. Let's design the parent component HTML. I'm creating simply so div. So here class container fluid. Okay. And here in this component, I will just use class as already class is there, bg dark. So text white. Okay. And padding 3 and style height height as some 400 pixel, 300 enough. Okay. Like this I defined. Now this is the heading I will give as parent component. That is the parent component, and you can see the parent component ready. We have the parent component. Okay. Now we will design child component. That is parent. Let's create child component. Yeah, in the child component we have div, and so I say container, and in this also I will give some padding as some 2. Okay, and bg light, text dark. Okay, and here I will put height. So style height as some 150 pixel. Okay, that is the height configured. Fine. Now in this I will just give here as child component. This is child component. So we have parent component and child component. Now I want to access the child component inside parent. So let's go to the parent component. Very simple. Here after the heading, we have to just use the child component selector. What is it? App child. app child. That's it. That means you can access a component in another component. So I will save this and you can see child component is here. That's very simple. There is nothing complexity in that. Already we done that. Already we done this point. How to access a component in another component. So this point is clear. How we can access a component in another component. Just you need a selector. So let me put the answer for this first one. For this first one, how to access a component in another component. So that is the question. So, and the answer is simple. By using the selector, by using the selector of component, you can embed a component into another. By using selector, you can embed. That's very simple. That means what we have to do, suppose we are using the parent here. Parent component is there. In the parent component, we want to access the child component. Just we have to use the child, app child. So that is the selector. By using that selector, you can access. This is the technique. That means we are able to access a component in another component. Okay, that's fine. Now, the second important, how to transport data from parent to child. This is always easy. So, but some points we have to know. Transporting data from parent to child is always easy because you learned about JavaScript closures. You learned about JavaScript closures, right? What is a closure? What is a closure? In JavaScript, what is a closure? Closure defines how the members of outer function are accessible to inner, and how the members of inner function are accessible to outer. Closure is a technique where you can have a function inside function. You can have a function inside another function. That is, right, closure. Closure means you can have a function inside another function. And you already learned in JavaScript that the members of outer function are easily accessible to inner. You don't need any special technique, right? That means the members of outer are accessible to inner directly. Because they are in function scope, you can access directly. There is no special requirement. But the members of inner function are not accessible to outer. And making that available is closure. Closure is a technique that allows the functions to share data from inner to outer, outer to inner. Here the same technique we are following. Means the same concept here. So parent component have to send some data to child. Some data to child. Let's see. So here I will give simple, very important point here. If a parent have to send some data to child, that means this is called, because in event, I told you already, if you remember the definition yesterday for event, I told you that event uses a mechanism. Remember? Event follows. Event is a message, right? Event is a message. Event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to in order to notify the change. That is the definition of event. Event is a message sent by sender to its subscriber in order to notify the change. Actually, means this is you learnt in JavaScript, but I am showing here one more time. Suppose we have a function called insert click. We have a function insert click. We are writing a button on click is equal to on click is equal to insert click. Generally, you learnt already in JavaScript that many times people who don't know technically about event, they think that we are having a function called insert click and we are calling that function on click. Am I right? Many times people think that there is a function called insert click and we are calling that insert click. No, that is wrong. We are not calling that insert click. What is happening is on click, it is pointing towards that insert click. It is not calling, it is pointing towards it. You are not calling a method here. You are pointing towards a method. This is actually delegate mechanism. Delegate means we call as function pointer. It is a function pointer mechanism. Actually, that is function pointer mechanism. For example, I will show you, right? Generally, JavaScript events concept is this. See, suppose I will show you simple here. In the head section, I have a script. In the body section, I am having a button, insert click, insert. I am writing here on click is equal to insert click. I am defining like this. Now I am running this. Let's see. I will run this and you can see now. When I run this here, see, there is no function called insert click. There is no function called insert click here. And I am trying to call that function on click. Then obviously it should show error. It should show me an error saying that there is no insert click. There is no insert click. See, I will go to console, inspect, and I will go here in the console. You can see in the console, there is no error. If there is no function and you are calling that function, it should show error. It is not showing any error. You see, there is no function called insert click and it is not showing any error. That means it is not calling the function. Okay, then what it is doing? I click on insert. Now it will try to point towards that function. For that function in memory. When I click, it will look for the function and it is unable to find. Then it will show error now. That means events are not function calling. Events are function pointers. That is the reason event handler is a delegate. It is a function pointer. Event handler is a function pointer. I hope you know that. So on click is event. Am I right? On click is event. On click, it is pointing towards insert click. Am I right? This is called event handler. We have an event and we have an event handler. Event is on click. Event handler is on click. It is pointing towards insert click. And this is called sender. This is sender. Sender sends a notification. This is called subscriber. Sender sends a notification to the subscriber. subscriber will decide when and what actions to perform. What actions to perform, that is decided by subscriber. When to perform, that is decided by sender. Sender will tell when an action to be performed and subscriber will do that action. Remember these words. Later you will come across with these words directly. Later you will come across with these words directly. You will come across with these words in a concept called RxJS. We use RxJS in Angular. You will come across with that. Many people who don't have proper JavaScript knowledge, they think that senders, subscribers are new concept in a topic called RxJS because they don't know JavaScript first. Because in JavaScript itself, you use the words senders and subscribers and observers. We have observers, we have promises, we have senders, we have subscribers. These words you will learn in some libraries like RxJS and others. People think that they are part of those libraries. No, that is general JavaScript. Right? So, what is a sender? What is a subscriber? Sender sends notification and subscriber will perform the functionality. Here, who is sender, who is subscriber in our example? Now you see here, who is sender, who is subscriber? Parent is sender and child is subscriber. That means, what is the point I am telling? We will send a message from parent to child. We will send data from parent to child. If we are sending parent to child, parent is sender and child is subscriber. That means subscriber should contain some property in order to collect the data coming from parent. That means if parent is sending some message to child, then child should have a property to collect that data. So, what we have to do in the child? We have to keep a property ready to accept data from parent. Understood? If parent have to send data to child, in child there must be someone to catch that. In child there must be someone to hold it. That means now we need a property in child component to store the data coming from parent. Right? So, we will go to child component. In the child component TS file, go to child component TS file. Here, we will create a property. We will create a property called message from parent. Just complete I am giving. Message from parent. And what type of data you are expecting? You can keep any type, or I will simply put I am expecting a string. And initially what you are having in it, empty. Initially there is nothing inside it. We are expecting data. We are expecting data from which component? We are expecting data from the parent. So initially there is nothing, empty. Now child have a property called message from parent. This is responsible for holding the data that comes from parent. Now this message need to be displayed. Where to display? In the child component only I want to display. If you want to display in the child component, in child component HTML, under this heading, we will put a paragraph and here we will put, what is it? Message from parent. Message from parent. I will define that message from parent. So, okay, you can, and one more, I will put here. So, waiting for message from parent. I will just give this one. Initially. That means you see it is waiting for message from parent. It is waiting for message from parent. So, there is a property in child. That property is waiting for message from parent. Message from parent. Now if parent sends a message, then it will catch that and it will display here. It should display that here. That means we need to transport data from the parent component to the child component. Let's see. Now here one more point is that. So let's go to the parent component now. Still so much work is there here, right? Level by level I am explaining. I hope up to this everyone understood. So in order to get the data and store the data from parent, there must be one property in child. Okay, we kept that property. Okay, next go to the parent component. In the parent component, we have we will put a button. Okay, here I will put a button called send message. We have a button called send message, class btn light, like this I give it. We have a button called send message. When I click on this button, it should send message to the child. It should send message to the child, right? So we can do that here. See, the button is there. Okay. And you see here in the parent, we will put a message here. We will put a message. So message to child. This is a string type and initially it is empty. Message to child is empty. Now when user clicks the button, send button click. Okay. On send button click, this dot message to child is equal to here hello from parent. This message should be sent. That means we apply this message into this message to child. We will apply that the message to child here. That is what we are doing. Initially it is empty. So we can make it empty, or you can write like this. So or null is equal to, it is null. Null indicates that there is no value. Null indicates that value is expected during the runtime. It is expected during the runtime. At the runtime, we are expecting a value into it. Here, now when this method should fire up when user clicks the send button. So I will go to the parent and for this button click. On this button click, so we will write a event. What is it? Send button click. That is the function to fire up. This function will fire up and it will update the message. But remember, that message must be sent to, see, where is the message? Message is present in this property na message to child. Here the message is present. That message we have to send to this child. And remember, in child there is a property. In child component there is a property. What is the property? Message from parent. I will try to access that property here. How to write property? Square brace. In the square brace, child component have a property. What is the property name? Message from parent. Message from parent is the property. So that means this is the property of child component. That is the property of child component. Into this property, what value you want to send? We want to send the value message to child. Parent have a message to child. That message we will send to the parent. We will send that message to the parent. This is what we are going to do, right? But very important here. Now you will get one error. Error is nothing but, so it says that app child don't have a property called message from parent. It says that, the error says that app child don't have any property called message from parent, but it is having a property called message from parent. But you will see there will be an error. It says that cannot bind to message from parent because it is not a property of app child. This we were expecting. This error we were expecting. It says that I cannot bind because message from parent is not a property. We will check is any problem in spelling or anything. There is no problem in spelling. You see, message from parent. In the child, same message from parent. There is no problem. Then why it is unable to use? Of course, it cannot use because you know that any member that you created in a class is accessible only in that class. Right? Any class created in a module is accessible only in that module. How you can make it accessible outside the module? To make it access outside the module, you have to export it. Am I right? We have to export it. That means you created a property, but this component is not able to use that property. It is unable to use that property because any component can use a property and collect the value and store the value in the property only when it is marked with a directive @net input. It should be marked with the directive @net input. @net input is a directive. This directive is a member of main core component. We have to use input and we have to use @net input directive. What is the purpose of this input directive? It is a marker which exports this property and allows to accept input from outer sources. That means input is a marker which exports the property and allows it to accept values from any external source. So any property that you designed in a component is not accessible outside. We are trying to access outside, where in parent component we are trying to access. It's not possible. So if you want any property of a component to be accessible outside and to accept values from external sources, then it should be marked as input. So input directive is used to mark the properties so that they can accept the values from external source and they can be exported to other components. Now once I do this, you see now there is no problem in this. And it is saying that I can't bind to string. Of course, because here we marked it as a string type. We have to say string or what type we are expecting? Null. We are defining string or null type. Now you can see this. Now when I click on send message, now you can see actually the initial message we will keep here now. It is not null. We will put a message. So waiting for message. We will just put that here. You can see it says waiting for message. And I click on send button. It should send the message to child. That means from the parent component, we are sending message to the child. Data is transported from one component to another. This not any kind of data you can send. I am sending a string. You can send an object. You can send a array. Anything you can send. That means, so remember, this is just only syntax example. Later we will implement this in a real-time example. We will see in reality where we use this. This is just syntax example to understand the process first. Right? Now you can send any kind of data, and not only one, you can send any number of data. For example, child child component is having one more property. What is that property? It should be marked as input. We will say object. That means I will give as product object, or say product consumer. Product consumer is an any type object. Product consumer is an any type of object, and that product consumer should display the product details. That means I am just giving here the product details. Like here I am expecting the product consumer. What is it? It is an object, right? This is an object. Product consumer is an object, and it is expecting some properties, like it is expecting name. So initially empty. It is expecting price. Price is initially 0, something like this. It is expecting these details, name and price it is expecting. So here I will say name. So that is what? Product consumer dot name. And in the next line I will say product consumer dot price. So it is expecting those details. Initially empty. So I am going to parent component. From here we need to send a product. That means we have a product. So product is an any type of object. It is an empty object. Now what we do on button click? On button click we are sending this dot product is sending some data. Data is name. Name is what? Some name. And it is sending some price. Price is some price. Like this we define. Now we are sending an object. Now observe carefully in the parent component. App child is having another property, square brace. What is the property? Product consumer. Into that property we need to send the product. Product consumer is expecting an object. We are sending an object. Message is expecting a string. We are sending a string. Now you can send any kind of data. When I click on send here, it will send the details. It can be an object. It can be a string. It can be a number. Any kind of data you can transport. You can send. This is easy. Means you may think like it is a little bit complex, but this is the easiest part in our concept now. Now the hardest part is sending data from child to parent. That is the challenging one. Because this is very easy. From parent to child, you need only one input property. Only one input property is required. That input property is ready to collect the data, and parent is sending the data. It is displaying. Now the challenging part is how we can send data from child to parent. How we can send the data from child to parent. That means from a higher one. So it is easy. See. So from a higher one it is easy. Actually, this is the parent and this is the child. And from parent to child. So from parent to the child, you can easily throw something into this. But child have to send something to parent, then it have to emit outside. It has to throw outside the value. It should throw the value outside. Coming from outside to inside is easy. It is just like drop. You just drop. You don't need any extra power. You just drop it, it will go. But from lower to higher, you have to throw it. That means you need to throw an value. You have to emit an value. That emitted value will be catched by parent. That means this is some extra effort you have to do. That means it's not easy that child can send data to parent. Child have to emit one value. That emitted value parent should catch. And that means parent have to do the work, child also have to do the work in this case. That means how? Let's see now. I want to send data from child to parent. So let's see how we can send data from child to parent. To send data from child to parent, now in the child component HTML, so I will keep here 250. Yeah. Here I will keep one button and I will say class BTN and BTN dark. And here I will say send message here also, right? You can see here also I have send message. So 200 is enough. Yeah. I am using send message. Now, when I click on this send message in the child component, it should send data to parent. It should send data to the parent. Now, very important, parent cannot have input. Parent cannot have input properties. Then how to send? Child only can have input properties. So child is having input property, you are sending data into it. Parent cannot have an input property. So then how we can send data to the parent component? How we can transport data to the parent? Let's see here. Now the concept is when user clicks this button, I need to send some data. That means actually this child component, this is the child component. This child component needs an event. It needs an event. That event should emit. That event should emit the value. It should emit the value. When it emits the value, this value will be catched by parent. And when this emit value should happen, when user clicks this button, that means we want component to have a event. That event will emit the value, which will be catched by parent. That means we need a event for component. This is our own component. Our own component have our own properties. Currently, our component is having two properties. What is those properties? Message from parent and product consumer. These are the properties. Now, if you want an event, then you have to create an event. I will give the event as child component click. That is event. I want an event called child component click. Child component click, child component change, child component blur, child component focus, like that. You can use anything. Names your wish, you can give anything. I am giving child component click. There is no event called child component click in JavaScript. That means you are creating a custom event. How you can make it as a custom event? By using event emitter base. You have to import a class called event emitter, and this child component click must be of what type? Event emitter type. And event emitter is a generic type, as I told you. Now we will design it to send a string. Of course, you can send a string, you can send a number, you can send object, any type. As of now, I am creating to send a string. Now, whatever the value you emit as a string, that emitted value must be stored somewhere in the memory so that parent can use it. So you need a memory for this. You need a memory to allocate for this. How to allocate memory? New event emitter. What type? String type. Memory should be allocated. That means it is a memory allocating operator. We are allocating memory for this event. We are allocating memory for this event. So event is ready. Event is ready. Now you decide what message to send, when to send. what message you want to send, when to send, that you decide. That means this will emit that message. This is responsible for emitting the message. When to emit, what to emit, now you decide. Right? That means this is a custom event. But one more problem is there. This event I am trying to use. This is event. What is the event name? Child component click is the event. Let's go to the parent HTML. How to write events for any component? You have to write event in a parenthesis. Here we are writing the event name. What is the event name? Child component click. This is our custom event. There is no event by this name at all in Angular or JavaScript. This is our own event. Just like click, just like change, we have created our own events. But now again problem will come. It says that I can't understand what you written. That means it is unable to recognize this event because you are trying to use it outside. You are trying to use outside the scope where you declared. You are trying to use this event outside. It says that I can't recognize this. Then what we have to do is, for properties, we have to mark them as input because they are going to collect value. For events, you have to mark it as output because they have to send value. That means what is input in and output directives role? Input directive role to collect value, and output directive role is to send value. That means output directive sends value. How it sends value? Through an event. Through an event it will send the value. Now you decide. This output is also a member of same Angular core. All are the members of Angular core library. You have to make sure that you are importing them. Because of Visual Studio IntelliSense, it automatically imports. Sometimes if you are using different editors, it is unable to import. You have to manually write. Right? Now the point is, now you decide when to send message and what message to send. So what we will do here, I will create another property. I will create another property. What is it? Message to parent. Okay, message to parent is what type? String. And here we will say hello from child. This is the message, hello from child. When to send this message? You have to send the message when user clicks this button. Am I right? Send message button. That means this send message will have an event. What is it? Click. We will use send message click. So on send message click, what we have to do here, we will write send message click. On send message click, we need to send that message. What is the message we have to send? Message to parent. This we have to send. It's not simply sending. We have to emit. Parent will simply send, drop it. But this child cannot simply send. It have to emit with the help of custom event. That means what we have to do, we have to take help of this dot child component click. It is a custom event. This event will emit. It will emit what value to emit? This dot message to parent. Message to parent. It will emit that value. That means when you click the button, this event will fire up. And that event is going to emit. It is going to emit this value. It is going to emit this value. Now, when it emits this value, where it is going to store? It is going to store in the memory under the reference. Remember, this is event related data. And you know already, event related data is stored in $event. Object related data is stored in $event.target. Right? In Angular. Generally in JavaScript, event related data is in event, object related data is in this. Here event related data is in $event. That means whatever message you are trying to emit, it is present in dollar event. Now what we have to do is, let's go to the parent component. Here we have to use the event. What is the event? Child component click. On child component click, it has to execute some function. Remember, this is parent component. Na? In parent component, there must be some method to execute on this event. When child component is clicked, some function should happen in parent component, which will collect the value. That means who will collect the value from a event? From an event, collecting the value is done by functions, right? That's what I showed you here previously. What I showed you the previous part here. This is the previous part. In the previous part, what happens when user clicks the button? That means when user clicks the button, some function should be there. Some function should be there to catch the value. How they will send the value? The value is sent by event argument, right? And here we need to catch that value by using E. That means now this is going to emit some value which you have to collect and use in the parent component. So in the parent component, put a simple string like, so message from child. Message from child is a string and initially empty. It is string and initially empty. And we will write a function get message from child. And this function have to collect the event related message. Event related message, what type of message is coming? String type it is coming. String type it is coming. Now this function get message from child, it should fire up on this particular event. That means on this event, we will call that get message from child. Now this event is having some message. It will emit that message by using dollar event. By using dollar event. That means what it will do? Child component click is a custom event. That custom event have a property. That means it is having some message. That message will be sent through dollar event. And we have to collect that. We have to collect that here. And we will apply that. This dot message from child is equal to E. E is nothing but a string type. If it is an object type, we can use E dot name, E dot price, like that we can handle. So it is a simple string type. Now where to display this message? In the parent component, I want to display that message somewhere here. I want to display the message somewhere here. Beside the button, I want to display the message. Then here I will put a span. And here I will write, what is it? It is a message from what? Child. Message from child. So now when user clicks this button, parent button, then it will send message to child. When user clicks this send, it will send message to parent. We are transporting data from child to parent. Child to parent. And this is not easy. Parent to child is only one step. You create an input property and transport the data. And from child to parent is the complex thing. Now, I hope you understood why it is experience level people interview question. Because 99% of you people are unable to understand. Am I right? I have to explain one more time. Nah, 100%. Right? That is the reason this is not at a fresher level to handle. Right? I need to explain one more time. I know that. Right? I know that I have to explain one more time. Because this is not easy to handle at fresher level. Right? Because that's not a simple task to handle. Right? We need to know again this point. right? It's very complex until or unless you know the architecture, how it works behind, right? So this, I will explain one more time here, how this entire process happens. 2-3 example I will give, you can handle that, right? So what is the key concept here is sending this simple one step finish, transporting data from parent to child. I will give you hint for that now. Now another is how to transport data from parent to child. What are the conditions for this? First point is, first, child component must have a property to accept data from parent. That is the first thing, right? And one more point is, so it must be child property must be marked with which directive? Input. That is also very important. Must be marked with input. That means syntactically we have to declare like this: input, and we have message from parent. It is a string type, so it is a null, and it is initially null. Like this you can give, right, what it is expecting. That is the first stage. That is the first step. After that, second important is, you can access the child property in parent container, which can send value from parent, That means it's nothing but, we have app child, right? In app child we have to use what? Message from parent. In that you can send any message you can send. No need to write button click and all this. Directly you can send some message. I am just sending on button click, but you can directly send some message here. It is ready to accept that and display. That means it's not necessary that you have to send on button click only. You can directly send some message, because it is just expecting a message. When to send, what to send, that you decide, right? So you want to send directly on loading, or you send on button or drop down change, that you can decide. So this is the concept, and it's very simple. It is simple because we just created a property to collect the data from the parent, and parent is sending data in the child to the child by just using a property binding technique. By using property binding technique, it is sending the data. That's simple. So now, how to send data? Another point is how to transport data from child to parent. First I will give the syntaxes, then we will see one more time the example how it actually works, right? How to transport data from child to parent? What are the requirements for this? First step, what we have to do to transport data from child to parent, first thing is, child component must have a custom event. Understood? Child component must have a custom event, and custom event is of type event emitter, and it is of type event emitter, and must be marked with which directive? Output directive. This is very important. That means how to create the custom event. Syntactically you have to create like this: @ output, and you have to write, so child component click, and it is of event emitter, and event emitter, any type of data you can send. New event emitter, and any type of data. Memory is allocated for this. That is how we need to configure. That means we need to first create a custom event which can emit the values. Now after that, it should emit some value. It should emit some value. When to emit value, what to emit, that you have to decide by using an event. That means now child component can use any event to emit value So it can use any event to emit value. That means, for example, on button click, what it has to do, it has to emit that value. That means this dot child component click, right? Child component click, it should emit whatever value. Understood? We have to just emit that value. Whatever value you want to send, you have to emit that value. Now what should happen in the parent component? Parent component can use the custom event of child to access the data using $event. Understood? That means what we have to do in the child component, what is app child, in that we have to use child component click. On child component click, you have to just use a function. That means some function I am writing. What this function have to do is, it should collect the emitted value. Emitted value you collect by using $event. That we have to write here. A function we have to write through E. We can access, E is any type. We can access that emitted value and store. That means we can store that emitted value in a reference. That means we can put this dot message is equal to whatever E is there. Now this we can display. That means you can display message in a parent container. In parent container, you can display the message. That means just you have to bind what the message. In the parent, you have to do that. These are the steps I have shown you just now. These are the steps. But I will show you this example one more time. Right? I will show you this example one more time, so that you can see practically handling it. Then we will see that same concept with one more good example, a real world example, where we use that really, right? That we'll see next session. Right? I will post this example now. I will post that example now, but one more time I will explain this example on Monday. Right? Monday, one more time I will explain with one real-time scenario also, so that you will get a clarity on that. Then we can go into other concepts, how we can use other components and libraries, right? This is very important part. So one more time I will explain. Right? Monday we will continue. Okay? Right. This example I will post, parent child example. You try. So if face confusion, I will explain Monday one more time. Okay? Right.